uncomfortables.
Throw that out there.
Yes, I do.
I'm Michael Lenhart, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
And I'm Jeff Kofsky. I'm a business coach and have been working with this group for some time now, right?
Mhm.
You want to begin?
Yes, if you'd like to begin, go ahead.
Okay, great. So, it's, we appreciate the opportunity to present to the Codes and Infrastructure Committee of the Borough of Pottstown. Again, this is formulated by the Citizens Action Committee for Pottstown. So this group, who are we? We are homeowners, renters, taxpayers, residents of Pottstown area. Our executive committee, I think, is sitting right here. Please, if you wish and to follow along, just take note of the email address for this group and also a way of contacting by telephone. So tonight we'd like to present to you what we see as a serious problem that I think we're all aware of, even before we start jumping into the presentation, and then look at a solution that this group, the Citizen Action Committee, has done quite a bit of research around. And from there, we'd like to talk about the benefits of this approach to remedying the problems that we see around residential communities, and then talk about next steps. And we'll have a time for questions afterwards, and I will defer to the committee to do that. So, it's not difficult to see that we have a problem with mismanaged real estate in the borough. Certainly it's unsafe for its residents, but it reduces the quality of life not only for those residents, but for all those who would wish to be a part of this community. The condition of those residences, it invites crime, it causes blight, and it costs municipalities through the additional kinds of services that are called for in the dire state of some of these residences. And in essence, really for the financial concern, mismanaged rental real estate, it does consume a higher proportion of borough services, it impacts the budget and the ability to build our town. We feel that we're in a place of urgency because of the condition that we're experiencing. We feel we're kind of moving into a downward spiral, that if we don't take some action, we'll be more and more serious. So with a downward spiral in property values, that creates a negative dynamic that rewards the investment broker who's really here to gain financial benefit for themselves within this environment, and punishes homeowners or prospective homeowners and the good landlords also. In a way, really, it's a race to the bottom. So in this kind of environment, it's not hard to see how, for an investor who's really just interested in the financial return, that it would be more financially rewarding simply to neglect that property and buy a new one, and neglect that one as well. Now, the solution that we'd like to talk about, which is the Better Landlord program, has at its heart a key tool, a key instrument that allows municipalities, boroughs, to do a study, to geocide, in other words, to relate the cost of services to each and every address of residences in the borough. And that data will be used to establish better landlord goals, set standards, and track results. We'll see a little bit of that as we go forward. So who is this Better Landlord program? Who are they? What have they done? What do they have to offer? Their team is, to our knowledge and our investigation, exploration, the most experienced in the country in helping communities across the whole nation to implement this program. The first project, the pilot project, was the creation and implementation of this first Better Landlord program in Ogden, Utah. Talked a little bit about this assessment tool. That allows the borough to collect critical data about the cost of municipal services, which is used by each residential unit, and track the effectiveness of the program. So it's easy to see where the town has to attend to bad situations at a high cost. And the Better Landlord program is the only firm that we know of that offers a complete turnkey solution to minimize risk and maximize the program effectiveness. And there have been many cities that have used this program with the result in reduced crime, higher property values, and stronger neighborhoods. We feel that this is really a compelling program, and we'd really like you to look with us deeper into it. So this Better Landlords foundational municipal study, it pinpoints and tracks the actual cost of, so what are we talking about? The cost of police services, code enforcement services, which you're quite aware of, the area of risk we have in that area, fire safety services, and emergency medical services. What is the benefit, or what are the benefits of the Better Landlord program? It has made communities safer, and it could certainly make Pottstown safer. It encouraged revitalization, which we all want for our town. Creates additional revenue, and you'll see a little bit how that takes place. And it lowers the cost of municipal services because you're not engaged in kinds of emergency or serious situations that you need to address and remedy. And it reverses the downward spiral and increases property values. So, most cities choose to implement Better Landlord program that address the problem of crime. How? By implementing a program that screens tenants, uses background checks, requires eviction for criminal activity, prohibits tenants that have committed felonies within the last 3 years, and prevents crime through environmental design. And that's an interesting point. I was talking to Katie about that. We might want to revisit that at the end. So it strengthens neighborhoods by attracting tenants that are law-abiding citizens. So by having higher standard rentals, which we can enforce, it will attract better tenants. It will increase property values. It will promote longer-term tenancy because we're providing for a safe and livable environment for folks. And it allows us to diversify neighborhoods with owners and renters all interested in the well-being of their community. So, especially interesting to you, the Better Landlord program focuses on those aspects of property management that encourage the elimination of code violations on rental properties that otherwise would cause blight and safety concerns with the neighborhoods. So this program has been able to grow revenue base for the municipality that will promote stable economic growth. So participants, that is landlords, voluntarily reduce consumption of municipal services provided to rental dwellings. Landlords are not compelled to, but certainly are encouraged to participate and pay the full cost of municipal services provided to rental dwellings with incentive. And we know neglected rentals consume a larger amount of the services that we looked at, the police services, the fire services, crime, and so on. So a Better Landlord program will clearly define the extent of the problem in communities by, one, reviewing crime statistics. So for instance, for Pottstown, identifying and quantifying rental properties and the condition of those properties, determine the disproportionate impact on borough resources and services for renter and owner-occupied residences, but especially for those that are unable or unwilling to provide the livable standards for the resident and for the building itself. How is that done? So, that's calculating the actual cost of neglected rental properties, including the codes enforcement, police and other services, which we've talked about. And this becomes, so there's a kind of process taking a look at what is the overall cost, so how then to stratify and determine the licensing fees and so forth. So, but it's based on real analysis of the current situation. So, for example, here is an example from South Salt Lake City, Utah. So if you look at that standard annual rental license fee, that would be the standard for the township. But if a landlord enrolls in the program, you can see the incentive in terms of reduction. So for single-family duplex apartment, but there can be quite a strong differentiation between those that really want to build up their communities and those that are just interested in making money at the expense of others. So the program is really focused on making bad landlords good, and hopefully to their delight, and making good landlords better. So there's an educational component of the program. I don't think it's so much in the presentation, but it's a key component of then training landlords how to raise up the level, establish and maintain the level of housing safety and quality that provides for strong neighborhoods. So participation by landlords, as we said, is voluntary and requires commitment to high rental standards. Or, if not, payment of the increased business fee. So we kind of saw an example of that just in the last slide. Landlords who choose to participate, they receive training on better management principles, and they also agree to comply contractually with laws, codes, and standards that the borough sets. And as we saw before in that example, landlords will pay a higher fee, and we do have a large number of those kinds of residences. And I think we all think that the impact will be significant in also strengthening the community with those kinds of increased fees, or a commitment to make those rentals better. Now, in 2004, in Ogden, Utah, this program was implemented. The former Ogden Mayor, Matthew Godfrey, developed a program with measurable reductions in blight and crime. So 29% increase in revenue from business rental licenses, it's just for the standard fee. 22.78% reduction in crime. During this same period, there was a 12.67% reduction in crime nationwide. And a 77.7% increase in property values. And that, to me, looks quite significant and quite compelling. The overall cost for reactive spending for police, fire codes, and enforcement becomes an ongoing benefit as more landlords join the program. So, John Patterson of Casper, Wyoming, was asked to name the 3 best results of the program. And he came up with less crime, uniting communities, people within communities to uphold the standard, now higher standard, and increase in economic development. And I think those are all things that we're deeply interested in Pottstown, right? Benefits of good landlords: reduction in crime, strengthen neighborhoods, increased revenue and property values, and lower utilization, or we could really say misutilization of city resources that are needed by good residents. So I lost that. Let's go back. Okay, I'll do it this way. Get a chance to see that again. So next steps, and that's what's really important. If this is at all interesting to you, if you think there's a potential to revitalize our community, to change the reputation that Pottstown has, because really that is the result that isn't stated, but we know that will certainly be the case. We'd like to create a working relationship with you. So from now into the future, and we can talk a little bit about how we can bring that about. So we all have, I think, you and our group here has common interests, and the citizens of this town. We'd like you to learn everything that you can do about this program, and we are more than happy to work with you in developing that knowledge base and those relationships with those who really tested and proven this program. So taking a look at it and really inspect and see, is this a program that really will work for Pottstown? Is it worth that investment in it? So I've been asked to say, like Councilman, I don't know who Ryan Proskell is. But, yeah, hi Ryan. So now you know. What questions you have as the point of contact with better landlord organizations. So you have a great group of people if you want to work with them.
Yep.
And once you see, this says April, right? But once you see the value, if you really take a look at that, if you feel that there's value for our community, then we really would feel it's important to present this to council. Anyway, to work with the borough itself to really get this program implemented and working well. I think you do have this printout, and so you do have, you can refer to this website. It's a gold mine of a website. Yeah, it talks about the people who put this program together, who are operating it. It talks about resources. So that's something you could do on your own, and I hope we do it in tandem and together. So I'm going to ask if there are any questions. This is a great time to address this committee.
I'd just like to say that after speaking with one of the founders of the Better Landlord program and asking him for referrals to communities that have used the program for a number of years, he did refer me to John Matthews, the mayor of Casper, Wyoming. And is his last name Matthews? I can't remember. Anyway, I corresponded, Patterson. I corresponded by email, and when I sent my request to him, I asked, what are the 3 benefits of the program? What are the 3 challenges of the program? And when he finished telling me their experience, he said, by the way, my wife is from Pottstown, and my 2 stepsons were born and raised in Pottstown, and we would really love to see Pottstown succeed. So I thought that was wonderful to have that connection, and they're really a great, intelligent group of people. The other really beautiful thing about this program is it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. The only aspect of this program that will cost anything is the data collection and analysis. The actual Good Landlord program will be implemented at no cost to the borough.
Okay, I have a question about the training. The training that is referenced a couple different times on the slides, and I'm looking at one of the other pieces of information. Is that actually included as part of the training, or would we have to establish some kind of training program? And Who would be,
They've got the program developed,
okay,
and they will add and subtract based on our state laws and borough ordinances. The training program pretty deeply covers issues like what their legal obligations are, what they need to do to actively screen tenants and do background checks. It goes into the eviction law process. In many places where this Good Landlord program is established, the police or the codes enforcement department are set up to notify a landlord immediately as soon as there's a problem. So the first time the landlord understands there's a problem, he's given the chance to correct that problem. But if it's a criminal activity such as drugs being sold out of the house or whatever that is, he has to start immediate eviction proceedings according to his binding contract with the borough. If it's a codes violation and he's a good landlord, obviously you're going to want to give him a heads up and let him know he needs to take care of it.
right,
Part of their registering with the borough means that they also give you everything you need to be able to get a hold of them in a moment's notice if you have to. If there's a problem, you've got email addresses, you've got telephones, every which way possible to get a hold of them. Because even if they have a management company, they're ultimately legally responsible for what goes on in their properties.
okay, so this kind of works in I guess according to what we have to do with the property maintenance code, is we do still have to notify them in writing for property maintenance violations. So, are they saying we would have to notify them by telephone, email, or whatever, then follow through with the process? In order to follow through with the prosecution, you need to have that paperwork in play.
Right.
So it's coordination of both then that
Yeah.
you'd be addressing violations.
And if the landlord has signed his binding agreement with the borough and changes his mind about participating, then you have a legal option to go back and collect from that landlord. All of a sudden, he's paying at this level instead of this level. It incentivizes the program for good landlords because, like he pointed out, in Ogden or South Salt Lake City, each fee structure is based on the individual municipality's actual costs. But this town had very high costs. They were overrun with slum properties. And to hear them talk about Ogden over the telephone, Ogden was in pretty bad shape when they started this. So you will see basic fee structures somewhere up in the $300, $400 price range. And that's incentive enough for a landlord to say, I'm not going to make any money as a landlord if I have to pay this. But for the borough, you've got your fees up front. You're not chasing them down anymore.
I know one of the bigger arguments we get from a landlord is they don't want to put any money into it because the tenants don't take care of it, but then they're the ones who actually put them in there.
Right.
So,
The truth is, they don't want to put money into it because they're seeing their investments lose money. Property values have sunk to an all-time low, and there is no point, anybody who can do simple math would not put $50,000 into a $14,000 house. But this also serves to raise property values to the point where people who invest in Pottstown have a reason to make their properties nice. It's the same for homeowners. We're reluctant to put anything new into our house because since we bought it, our property value is tanked.
it's already went.
A lot of good landlords have contacted me too, and they're excited about the program. They see the benefit to themselves, even though, you know, many of them would like to say, well, I already know everything I know about being a landlord, but I suppose I could learn something.
When I worked in Manheim Borough, I actually put my own little 3-night training for new landlords or those who were interested in learning. And we took some of the basics, which I think some are in this program, is getting the fire department there, and we talked about the environmental or how is your property, does it have a lot of bushes with no lighting, and how does that increase crime?
Exactly.
The police chief, I had the one lawyer who had written the landlord tenant handbook there to talk about it, and we had landlords too, and I feel it was successful. We had about a 60% turnout, which was good for small
Yeah.
municipality.
That's good anyway.
And all of our landlords were local, I think, except for 3. So most of the people in that borough were local enough that they could drive by their property, they could make spot checks, they could, had relationships with their tenants. So-
I think that's another benefit of this program is that the landlords that are absentee, that you may never see and probably have never met, they're going to be brought into the borough because they're going to want to address this. They're either going to be on the program and they're going to have to come sign up, or they're going to come down and complain heartily because their fees are $375 a year. So one way or the other, you're going to see the landlords. And I think that was one of the interesting things that John said about Casper, the 3 things that were challenges, is that at first the landlords are gonna complain, but they did, when the borough changed the ordinance back in 2010, 9, whenever that was, and it was a pretty modest change. And the people that don't wanna do the right thing are gonna scream the loudest. And the other thing is, he said it did make a little extra work for their town employees at first, but once they got the method down, it actually reduced their time they spent doing stupid work. They were out really interacting again with good landlords and good tenants, and
It's easier to work with cooperative people.
yeah, much easier. And that environmental, crime control by environmental design was actually developed by the United States justice system. And it's really based on having adequate locks, windows, proper lighting, all of that kind of
Bushes and
stuff.
trees trimmed back away from steps and, where people couldn't go and sneak in a window or whatever, so.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, what about, is there a problem with, like, say, landlords, they don't spend much for, like, I guess they showed that one house, which has $14,000, well, they wanna put tenants in there, and then all of a sudden this comes about, and do you have a problem with landlords abandoning homes? Do you know
Well,
what I'm saying?
no,
Because of all
probably,
the,
Carol, overall in Pottstown, I would have to guess we would have no bigger problem than we already do.
yeah.
What we see happening in our neighborhood is, it's called extractive investing. These investors come in with a pocket full of cash. They buy a property for $10,000. They get a Section 8 tenant in there because it's maximum money. They do
Yeah.
nothing to the house, and they'll fight you in court if you try to make them do something. But the whole time that they're neglecting their house and the police are coming repeatedly to babysit their tenants, they're pocketing the money,
Right.
pocketing the money. And when they're finished and they can no longer extract another penny out of that property, they walk away from it anyway. So would it mean that more people might walk away? Probably so, but we will be better off for that. If they just decide that they're not gonna pay that $375 fee or whatever it is, and they're not gonna cooperate and join the landlord program, because they just don't want to be good landlords, and there's gonna be a little bit of that.
Well, then is there a problem with, like abandoned homes, that, you know what I mean, you have the landlord owns it, but you don't want to have tenants in it, you don't want to do anything with it, so it sits. So would you have more of that? I mean, just, you know what I'm saying, would there be more of a problem with that?
Yeah. Oh,
Abandoned
yeah,
homes?
Carol, Dave just brought up a really beautiful point, and this is something that's being worked on right now too. Do you know that the state of Pennsylvania just passed a land banking law? The land banking law is so powerful, it will give the borough and the county the power to move those properties into a land bank for further redevelopment, so that you will have fewer blighted properties sitting around the way they are now.
Yeah, 'cause that's a big issue, that's a big problem too, you know?
Yeah.
Everywhere. Mhm.
But you know what, a phenomenal number of these landlords are gonna step up and fix their houses up and get better tenants and join the program, because they're gonna see how lucrative it can be to them too, as property values begin to go up. And this is one of the things the good landlords have told me is, they bought property here to rent because they believed in Pottstown and they believed property values would go up. And they were seeking the better tenants because they want long-term people that are gonna take care of it, so that when they decide they're ready to get out of the real estate business in that regard, they actually have something of value to sell.
And I'm sure there's a domino effect too, because if you have better landlords, better tenants, it's also gonna help the school district.
Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I did want to mention this program for, the data collection aspect of this is huge for Pottstown because we have never had solid data on what goes on at each address and how many of these addresses are broken up into how many apartments. That's what this data process will do for Pottstown, and it can be used in a multitude of ways, not just for this program, but once the borough has this information in hand, it's a piece of gold. And they only charge between $20,000 and $25,000 for this data collection and analysis, which he said you really pretty much get back the moment that you implement the Good Landlord program and you're bringing in the actual cost of what it's taking for you to run this borough and to keep those landlords and slum houses and everything at bay. So it pays itself off really, really quickly. I was kind of surprised it was that cheap. I was thinking, oh my God, it's gonna be $100,000.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I have a house, we own a house, we've lived there 40 years, and the house next door was a rental. And the police were there all the time, there was drug activity, the neighbors were moving in and out. Another one would move in, which would be just as bad, if not worse. And a dentist from over in Exton, Westchester Way, bought that house, and he put money, good money, $50,000, $60,000 into those 2 units, and made them absolutely gorgeous inside. And he really checked out and did all kind of background checks on the tenants that he moved in there. And I must say that for the last 14 years, we have had really nice tenants. There's only been one change in the tenants in the one dwelling that had to move because of apparent illness. And he keeps his property very nice. And I think that he must be from Ogden. Because if I call him, if I see something and call him, he'll take care of it right away. Like I called him and said, Joe, your tenant up front is not shoveling the sidewalks. Within an hour, he was over here from Westchester, shoveled the sidewalk, bought the tenant salt, bought her a shovel, and told her it is her responsibility to keep that sidewalk cleared. He's very adamant about where his tenants park, and I think it's because he has taken pride in his property and he doesn't want the property value to go down.
Well, that's good, and it's a shame we don't have more like that. Can I give you a list of homes that we have around here? We have a couple more. This was very good.
I think once this landlord recognizes that their days are numbered, you're gonna see more really responsible investors saying, these people have a grip on it. We're going to Pottstown.
And this, but the thing of it, this doesn't happen overnight, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
nothing happens overnight, and
Right.
it takes time. And how long did it take Ogden to finally everything turn around pretty well for them?
They implemented the program in 2004, and the statistics that Jeff put up there were 5 years later, so 2009. They had seen
It
it.
takes time, and
Yeah.
that's not bad. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
5 years goes by quick.
And they did say that once you give them the go-ahead, they can get the data and get it all set up and ready to go in just a matter of a couple months. And then implementing the actual program is fairly simple because they help you write up the contract. And they're, you know, it's a little bit like a buffet. You get to choose from the Good Landlord objectives as to which ones you want to incorporate into your initial policies. But he said a large number of them actually go for the whole taco because it really is powerful. It's a big, big tool. And one of the possibly more controversial aspects of this is that fair housing law in the United States and HUD do not afford protection to felons. HUD does not allow felons to move into Section 8 property for the first 3 years upon release from prison. Presuming that in that 3-year time, they're going to reconnect with their families, they're going to get a job, they're going to try to make a better life for themselves. If they're not going to do that, there's usually a high recidivism rate within those first 3 years. This program asks the good landlords not to rent to felons for the first 3 years after they're released from prison. That's a big problem in Pottstown. We have drug dealers getting out of jail and coming right back to Pottstown because they have connections here.
We have a problem with them coming out of state too, people coming
Yeah.
out of state. That aren't, you know.
Because they can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they can find a place to live.
Mhm.
Now granted, for a while, the people that don't join the Good Landlord program are still gonna be able to rent to felons,
Right,
but it's just not gonna be lucrative for them to do that for very long.
yeah. And now, do they have like a good landlord policy that like the landlords get together, say maybe twice a year and have like some sort of an update meeting or something like that?
That's a great question. Every 2 years, they have to take another 4-hour course because the laws change and things rearrange. So they take another 4-hour course, refresher course. Some of these municipalities have required a biannual meeting between the landlord and the tenants.
Oh.
That each have to sign off to and deliver to the municipality saying they've had this meeting. And the meeting will cover things such as your responsibility to put your trash cans around your house, to do this, this, this. I think in Pottstown that's also a really good idea because I think the tenants here are a little on the wild side. They really don't think they have to take any responsibility.
Well, I know a lot of places it's a little tough to get your trash can in the backyard.
Yeah,
But-
well, whatever it is, but
But, yeah, but,
Yeah.
and now, like, does this cause, down the line, will this have any more cost to the borough? Or once it's implemented, it should just kind of roll?
actually, from everything I've learned about this program, it increases the borough's revenue.
Okay. And it doesn't add any more burden to, like, roads and that type of a thing?
No, it almost right off the bat, it will increase the borough's revenue because I think when they come back with the analysis of what it's costing the borough to address these slum properties one by one by one, we're gonna all be shocked. For example, David and I live across the street from a house that was recently rehabbed and it was bought by an investor at sheriff's sale. It was rehabbed. I think he did a nice job on the rehab. From what it looked like, they were not cheesing out. But he immediately moved a Section 8 family, a woman in, and I'm not downing Section 8. They do this because Section 8 pays better.
Well, and it's definite money in the
Yeah,
bank.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this was in April that he moved her in, and as soon as she moved in, it was difficult for David and I to tell who actually was the renter there. There were so many people coming and going. It wasn't until just about a month ago that I actually figured out who lives there. But there was a gal in a cast. One of the first things after they moved in, the renter's daughter moved in against HUD rules because she has a felony. And she got high on drugs, jumped out of the back window, broke his window to pieces, and broke both of her legs. As soon as she was spotted on the street in her wheelchair, several neighbors who know this family came up and said, "Oh, these people are bad news. I don't know what they're still doing in Pottstown. I don't know why they're here." Lo and behold, it's February. We have called the cops, just me and David alone, 12 times. The cops are there almost every other day.
Well, doesn't the landlord get charged for that then? I thought that was something that
I asked specifically about the property when you told me
we
to.
implemented it for, depending on, you know, like the first time it's, you know, and then the second time, every time after that, the borough charges them X amount of dollars to come to the house.
It's not being done, Carol.
They
I
have
asked
to
the
fill out
landlord.
a disruptive conduct report. Then it has to get up to code within a certain period of time. Then we have to notify the landlord. It's a paper trail. So if they only go there and they're talking to them about keeping the noise down or turn your radio down and a report isn't really made, we don't get that report.
Okay.
And it's one call a month, correct? And then that's what you have,
Right.
and after that it's your charge.
In this situation though, you know, if there were not reports generated, I'd have to ask why. Because on Christmas Eve, they arrested a guy who just robbed Redner's, who had run right in the front door to hide from the cops. That's the kind of things we've been calling the police for. It hasn't been loud stereos, it's been all kinds of.
Now that can be a couple months.
And I asked the landlord, because every time we have to call the police, we call him too. And finally, he said, you know, I'm just really getting sick of hearing from you, Katie. And I said, oh, really? Well, perhaps it's time to evict. And I said, well, have you ever been charged by the police for this? And he said, no. I'm aware of the ordinance, but I suppose it's kind of, they kind of decide when and who they want to bill. And I said, no.
Well, like she said, if they don't fill out the paperwork.
And we're on like a very short timeline.
Right, I know.
We don't get it within, and I don't know if it's like 10 days or something like that. And I know the police are busy and they, you know, it takes time to get reports done, but if they don't get them to us and then us have enough time to get it to the, it just falls right through the.
But, you know, if there was some actual technology in place here, it wouldn't even be an issue. I mean, write that report, it generates a bill, and it goes straight to the landlord.
Because Donna, it doesn't matter if, I'm sorry, Katie, it doesn't matter if the police just went and gave them a warning, they can still generate a report saying we gave them a warning, and that still can
Yeah, and
generate
I
a
can't
fine.
speak for the police, that's
Right.
just what I'm
Right,
saying.
right,
I only know that
right.
that's the way the process works.
And that may be, they're gonna spend a lot of money upgrading their in-car computers. So that may be part of the upgrade, which, you know, we just have to wait and find
Yeah.
out.
But that's damned expensive babysitting when you come right down to it, having the cops there every other day.
That's our tax dollars at work.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you know what, excuse me, what we've been doing with the landlords that, you know, have new people coming in there, we talk to our landlord and then let him know that we are concerned, you know, about these people moving in. You know, what's their record? And, that seems to go a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked to ours too, but again, they still move people in for the money and then the police are there. I'm babysitting their tenants now too, is what it really has turned out to be, because he did evict and then he felt sorry for them and moved them back in after 2 weeks of being out of the house. The landlord claimed that they had, the couple had got a social worker and a homeless representative who were going to work with them to keep them in the house so that they could behave better. Well, the day after they moved in, the police were there again, and I said, you know, okay, now, he called and told me about all this, and then the landlord's asking me to watch his tenants for him and make sure that they don't do this, make sure that they don't do that.
And I'm getting what percentage of the rent?
Right.
Is the 10-day requirement a legal requirement or a code requirement? The 10-day that you have to receive the complaint
this,
within 10
this was
days?
part of, I believe it's part of an ordinance.
Ordinance.
Yes.
It is an ordinance, yes.
Definitely 2010, or whatever year it was.
It is an ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2010.
Yeah, that's the disruptive conduct report that needs to be filed by the police and needs to get up to code, so
Correct.
do all the notification.
But would that not bring in a lot of revenue? I mean, the police seem to be pretty busy.
Yeah, I would say.
Get the report out.
Well, that's it. When it was first passed, mean, we have forms that we filled out, we sent right off to the landlord, we kept a copy for us. But when you stop getting reports,
Yeah, you don't get many now?
I don't know, we've not had any that I know of. I
It
mean,
might be your-
I wouldn't,
It
I'm
might-
not in a need-to-know position, but I'm not aware that we've gotten any for a while.
It might be
So
worth
this-
asking the police why they're not doing it. Are they being
Yeah,
paid
let's
off?
not-
Did it take them too much time?
So isn't it true that this tool that Better Landlord Program has developed will be able to pinpoint where that's happening throughout the township?
Yeah. The properties that are chronic will show up in this data collection, and then there'll be a dollar figure attached to that. This is how much this property has used over the past whatever years in police services and code services. And then again, remember, on top of that, it's not even calculating the time you spend in court trying
Well,
to get
the
those.
police spend a lot of time.
What the program's gonna do is going to give you a viable, set fee that we can't supposedly challenge on
Yes.
in reference to setting a annual license registration, or whatever you want to call it. Reading recently had a licensing fee, and they were challenged